I like to introduce the terminology of each and every terminology that is mentioned in the title. So the control systems, as because this program is of control systems, you must be aware of like what are the control systems. And but when we are talking about the control systems that are playing a very critical role in safety critical systems, the reliability or the dependability targets are very high. The dependability requirements are very high for such kind of control systems which are working in some safety critical applications, and the applications that includes like in the nuclear energy or defense, automobiles. So these are the safety critical systems because the failure of which can lead to the catastrophic disasters, and even it can lead to the loss of human life. So with that, like, it is very much essential to perform the reliability analysis, and there are the several methods that exist through which we can perform the reliability analysis. But the method that I'll be touching on, that method will be able to capture the dynamics of the system, because the traditional methods, if you look into the reliability analysis methods, the traditional reliability analysis methods, those methods were based on the structural attributes, and they were not able to capture the dynamics of the system, because even if you design the system for n inputs, but when your system is coupled with the other systems, and definitely those kind of my system can confront such kind of input for which it has not been designed, and the reason could be because either it is not specified in the requirements, or I have not postulated such kind of inputs. So in that sense, what could be the behavior of my system? So definitely here the importance of dynamics plays a very important role, and the methodology that I'll be talking about, which can capture all the dynamics and through the model, and which is known as a stochastic model. So basically, if you talk about, there are the two kind of processes. One process is the non-stochastic process or deterministic process, in which I am 100% sure about the outcome of that particular process. For example, if I drop a pen like from a certain height, I can 100% guarantee like it is going to fall onto the earth just because of the gravitational force that is acting on it. But so such kind of processes are deterministic processes, which I can the outcome of which I can guarantee. But there are some processes, or there are more like several processes which are non-deterministic in nature. It means we cannot 100% guarantee the outcome of that particular process. And what I feel, because the human nature is also non-deterministic, so all the systems which have been designed by the human definitely will be non-deterministic, and that non-deterministic is known as stochastic processes. So there are the various methods or the modeling techniques which can model the stochastic processes as well as the deterministic process. So the stochastic process that I'll be touching on here we will be using the Petri nets. And so just to start with, let us have a outline of today's session. So I'll be talking about the reliability, what is reliability and what is the background. So reliability, if I talk, it is a probability of failure free operation of any particular system up to a given period of time under certain environmental conditions. Now here the three things are very important. When I say reliability is a probability, So definitely probability lies from 0 to 1. So the value of or the quantification of the reliability definitely lies from 0 to 1. And it is a probability of failure free operation, means success operation of any particular system, and up to given period of time. Now here up to given period of time is very important, because the reliability depends up to certain time. If I am talking that this thing is reliable, I will have to specify the time up to what period of time I am talking about its reliability. For example, even suppose when I was in schooling, I do have friends, and that time I felt like, okay, he is a very he's my good friend, and our friendship will be reliable for lifelong. But it doesn't happen, you know, the scenarios keeps on changing, and once you move on, and definitely you interact with so many other persons, and then you started, you know, coming up with the new friends. So in this way, or taken different example, for example, you purchase a laptop where you will get a warranty period of only 1 year. Why 1 year or 2 year or 3 year, whatever? Why not for infinite period of time? Because it cannot survive for infinite period of time. So if you are talking about reliability, definitely you'll have to talk up to what point, up to what period of time you are talking about. Okay, because everything has its lifetime. And the third one is, as I said in the definition, up to given period of time under certain environmental conditions. Now here environmental conditions are very important. The operating conditions or environmental conditions, these are very important. For example, consider the same laptop. If I have purchased this new laptop from any vendor, and I got a warranty period of 1 year, but I have brought this laptop, and suppose I threw it from, you know, for example, 14 to 15 story building, it will collapse. Then I cannot go again back to the vendor and say, look, you have given the warranty period of 1 year, and now I want my laptop returned, like new laptop in place in this replacement. What he will say? He will say like, you have not met the operating conditions under which this device has to be operated. So the reliability, it is, the three things are very important. First, it is a probability of the failure free operation, and up to a given period of time and under certain environmental conditions. We'll have to, so reliability is a function of time as well as the operating conditions, that we need to understand. Then I will be talking about the Petri-nets and modeling of the system. So as I said, like Petri-net is a very good graphical as well as mathematical tool, and this concept has been introduced by C.A. Petri. He was a German PhD scholar, where he introduced this modeling technique to model the stochastic processes. Although this modeling technique can also be used to model the deterministic process as well, but considering the stochastic processes, and this model is very beneficial because it has a potential to capture the dynamics of the system. Then we will look into what are the various properties of the Petri-nets, and what are the analysis techniques, and how those analysis techniques can serve you know, our purpose for reliability predictions. Although we can do a lot of other dependability prediction as well, but here specifically I will be focusing on the reliability. Then we will see like the reliability prediction framework. I have designed a reliability prediction framework. We will see what are the various steps that are involved in that framework, and probably I'll take a case study so that like I can demonstrate each and every step that has been stated in the prediction framework, that how those steps can be, you know, can be applied in the real practice, and then we can conclude our session. So reliability that I have already talked about, like it is a probability of the failure-free operation of any particular system up to given period of time and under certain environmental conditions. So now mathematically, if you see, suppose there is a random variable x, and it represents the time to failure of a component. Then the reliability of the component at time t, as I said, reliability is a function of time. It can be given at probability that x should always be greater than t, because before t it should not fail, and I'm talking about the reliability up to t period of time. So we can write it mathematically, rxt is equal to f is equal to probability that x is always greater than t. And using mathematical knowledge, we can write it into equivalent to 1 minus probability that is x is less or equal to t. So this x is less than equal to t, it means it is failing before time t, so it is a failure probability. So we can write that is equal to 1 minus failure probability. fxt is a failure probability, or we can say unreliability also. So reliability is equal to 1 minus unreliability. So this is a basic definition. Now let us try to see the traditional reliability prediction methods. To start with, the very prominent reliability method is a reliability block diagram, in which what we do, we identify all the components of the system and try to find out in what way they are arranged. They are arranged in series or parallel or in combination, and then we can make a blocks of those components, and we can solve that. We can assign the probability of those particular components, and the failure probability of those particular components, or the reliability of those particular components, and then we can solve, we can calculate the overall reliability of the system. So for example, in the series system, if one component has a reliability R1, and there are only, let us assume there are only two components. So two component system is there, and suppose the reliability of component 1 is R1 and the reliability of component 2 is R2. Then the overall system reliability can be given by R1 into R2, because they are into series. So in that way, like the series and parallel, the formula can be used to calculate the overall reliability of the particular system by identifying the series parallel arrangement of the components. So if you see, the other method is reliability graphs, and reliability graphs are also very much similar to reliability block diagram, and they can also be converted into the reliability block diagram. Even reliability block diagrams can also be converted into reliability graphs. Now the notations of reliability graph is, it consists of set of nodes and edges, where edges are the directed arcs, and it represents the components in the system, and nodes are used to model the link between two components, or it shows the interface. So if you see in this figure, in left hand side, A, B, C, D, this is the reliability graph. Left hand side is the reliability graph, where A, B, C, D, these are the connectors. So basically the equivalent reliability block diagram can be converted into this arc represents the component, so it will be converted. This is 1, this V1 will be equivalent to component 1, and this A, this will be used as an interface. So one is there is a line that is connected, that is connecting from component 1 to 4. So in this way we can convert the reliability graphs into the reliability block diagrams, and that again reliability block diagrams can be solved to compute the overall system reliability. So now coming one more prominent model for reliability analysis are fault trees. And fault trees, it represent all the sequences of individual component failures that cause the system to stop functioning. For example, if you say there is you can say like that water is not coming. For example, the top event is water is not coming at home. Okay, now you can deduce what could be the reason. Either your tap has been choked, either your water is not supplied from the source, or in between the pipe has been broken. There could be three reasons. Let us assume there could be multiple reasons as well. And then like if the pipe has been broken, then where the pipe has been broken. So in this way we will try to identify the basic event. Okay, it is a deductive approach. We have to start with the observation, then what are the root causes basically, and we will try to then we will assign the failure probability of the root cause, and then we can solve like because it is a combination of OR and AND logic, we can solve either if it is OR logic, we can add these failure probabilities to calculate the top failure probability of, or otherwise if it is if it is arranged in the AND logic, we can multiply the failure probabilities to find the top level probabilities. So in this way the fault tree works. So the starting point is the definition of a very single like undesirable event, which is the root of the tree. Basically we will be basically constructing the root of the tree basically. So in this study of the reliability and availability, this undesirable event is a system failure event. Okay, so now the models that we have looked so far that can be solved, these are the traditional methods and can be solved using fast algorithms, assuming stochastic independence between the system components. But as I said, now there could be some dependent failures, and we really don't know how those dependent failures occurred, and we can capture all those dependency into some model. So next that we will see the models that can capture the dynamics of the system. That includes the Markov models or the Petri nets. So Markov models, to start with, these are the very powerful tool for reliability and safety analysis, because they provide the modeling capability for all sort of dependencies, and it is having a potential to capture the dynamics of the system, and hence it is able to model the stochastic processes. So it contains the set of states and the transition probabilities. So the idea is how it can be applied in the real scenario. We divide any system into the various states. For example, if there is a human being, the various states of the human being could be eating, sleeping, running, or walking, talking. So, and suppose these are the possible number of states, and moreover one state could be meeting an accident. So other meeting an accident state is a failure state basically, which basically we don't want, and other states are known as behavioral states. So basically one state can transit to another state. For example, if I am sleeping, I can this state can be transit to walking, because I can get up and I can start walking, from walking to running, right? So there could be the transitions. And what is the probability of the transitions? Basically that we assign. So Markov chain contains two important constructs. One are the various states, and second one is the transition probabilities among those states. Okay, and the states that we can segregate, if I'm talking about when we can model any particular system, it can be behavioral states, or it can be accident states, okay, or failure states. So for example, I have said in the case of human being, meeting an accident was a failure state. So for example, there are the only two states. Any system that is containing only two states, I and j. So q, and the transition rate means how many number of transitions per unit time from one state to another. So let qij be the transition rate from state I to state j. Then we can define like q, the self transiting will be, the self transition rate will be you just add all other transitions and negate it. Okay, so because sum of all the transition rate should be always 0. Okay, so this is from the balance law. Then coming towards the Petri nets, so this Markov chain was basically, this Markov chain has been introduced by Andrew Markov, and he was a Russian mathematician, and but it was having so many limitations. The limitations that include it will be very difficult to model the concurrent processes, because from one state to many state transiting would be definitely not possible to capture this behavior into Markov chain. So for the Petri net has been introduced, which can overcome all the limitations of the Markov chain. And there was one more important limitation of the Markov chain, was that the transition rates follow the exponential distribution. But you could have this kind of system where you have segregated into many states, and the transition among those states doesn't follow the exponential distribution. So where in that case, like, the Markov chain will not work. So Petri net, as well as Markov chain is not a very good in graphics to depict the behavior of the system in the form of graphics. So it lacks basically the visual communication, which can be overcome by the Petri nets. That was the concept that has been introduced by C.A. Petri. He was a German PhD research scholar, and he has introduced this concept in his PhD thesis. And it is a very good graphical tool as well as mathematical tool. And graphical tool, why? Because you can show the you can represent any system graphically, and even if you are if you have not read the specification, then also looking graphically you will be able to understand their entire requirements and how it will be beneficial. Let us try to understand with the help of one example. Suppose I am a non-technical person, but I am holding a very big business, and to run my business, suppose I want to I make ventilators, for example. Now there are some requirements for the ventilators, and I have outsourced this ventilator development to any particular company, and that company has modeled basically this ventilator. Now I don't know, I'm not a technical expert, but so when he models in the Petri nets, and he can show like what is the system behavior actually when it will be running, he can very easily represent with the help of the Petri nets. And even so, I can, this language, this modeling language will be very easily understood by me, even I am not a technical person. So it helps a visual communication, like even to the people who are not perfect or who are not technically very sound. Yeah, so I will be able to understand the entire requirements, whether all the requirements have been considered. And for example, the client has made some model and he shows me, and he shows like, okay, this way the product will work, and I can give the comments there. It's there itself, no, I want this particular specification, that specification needs a change, right? So in this way it is a very helpful, and it is a very good communication between theoreticians and practitioners, as well as we have seen like it can overcome the various limitations or shortcomings of the Markov chain. And why it is a mathematical tool? Because we can embed the mathematical knowledge in that particular model, and using state equations, and we can solve all those mathematical stuff to come out with the conclusions, or with some quantitative analysis, dependability analysis. That dependability includes maybe reliability analysis, or maybe safety analysis, performance analysis, but here we'll be specifically talking about the reliability analysis. So let us see the history of this Petri nets. So the concept has been introduced in 1962, as I said, and by C.A. Petri. And then after realizing his this modeling capability, MIT USA thought of conducting a conference on concurrent systems and parallel computation in 1970s. Then the conclusions were very beneficial, and the people were admiring this modeling technique, and the people started thinking to solve the real life problems in the industry. So in 1975 again, MIT USA conducted a conference on Petri nets and related methods. Later on it started getting popularity, and Germany then started a course on general net theory of processes and systems. And in 1980 again the France conducted a first European workshop on applications and theory of Petri nets. Then there various flavors of Petri nets started coming up to solve more and more complex and challenging problems, industrial problems. And so people started increasing the modeling power of these Petri nets, and various flavors started coming up where the people will be able to embed the timing information. For example, if I'm more interested to know the performance of my particular system, where the response time plays an important role, so definitely the timing information has to embed into my model, and we can solve that particular model. So I can come to know what could be the response time of particular action. Okay, so one special kind of Petri nets known as timed Petri nets. For that, Italy conducted a first international workshop. So these are the few milestones that I thought of touching on. And as I said, the Petri nets, if you see with respect to the applications, we can use it to model any kind of stochastic and non-stochastic processes, and it can use to solve quantify various dependability metrics. So now let us understand the definition, what actually Petri nets are. So let us say, and let us see with an example Suppose I want to model a very basic chemical reaction, that is water plus oxygen, that is giving hydrogen plus oxygen, that is giving water. This figure is a Petri-net figure. Let us try to understand. To start with, I will like to introduce each and every construct of this Petri-nets. If you see, there are the three big circles, and three big circles are known as places. So one circle is known as place. I am here taking three big circles to represent hydrogen, to represent oxygen, and to represent water. Now the next construct is, if you see, there is a one vertical rectangular bar. This vertical rectangular bar is known as transition, and there is one arc which is connecting this place to transition. So there are the three arcs. If you see, one arc that is going from hydrogen place to this transition T, and one arc is from oxygen place to transition T, and one arc is from transition T to place T, to place water. So this arc and arc are basically connectors, and they can connect the places with transitions and transitions with places, but there cannot be direct connection in between the places and in between the transitions. Okay, we should note that. So we will see, like first I am just introducing the terminology. We will see then how we have modeled this with respect to the reaction that we have taken. Now if you see, there is a numeric number on this arc. That numeric number is known as weight of the arc. So if you see, the arc that is connecting hydrogen place to transition T has weight 2, but that is connecting oxygen place to transition T has no weight. So if I am not putting any number, by default it will treat it as 1. So basically it has weight 1. Similarly, the arc that are connecting from transition T to water place is having weight 2. Now there is a concept of input arc and output arc. So the arc from which it is originating are known as output arc for that particular entity. For example, if you see the hydrogen place, this arc that is originating and which is connecting to T, so that arc is output arc for that particular hydrogen place, and where it is terminating for that particular entity, those arcs are input arc. So for transition T, you see that two arcs are terminating. One is coming from hydrogen place and another is coming from oxygen place. So basically the two arcs are terminating here. So these are the two input arcs, and one is output arc that is going out from transition T to water place. Okay. Now so there are the concept of input places and output places, and input are transition and output transition. So for this transition T, the places which are connected from the input arc are known as input places. So for transition T, hydrogen and oxygen places are known as input places, and for water, place is the output place for transition T. Similarly, for water place, T is the input transition, and for hydrogen and oxygen place, T is the output transition. Now there is one more construct. If you see, there are the embedded circles inside the place, and that embedded circle are known as tokens. So in this figure, hydrogen place contains two tokens, and basically I have represented here the tokens to represent the two atoms, because hydrogen contains two atoms, so I am representing it by tokens. Similarly, the oxygen place contains is containing two tokens, because oxygen also have two atoms. Okay, so this is the patterned figure. Now let us say how it is able to model this chemical reaction. So here this is the initial state of the system, means it is showing, this figure is showing just left hand side of the this reaction, where there are the two hydrogen atoms, because the weight here I have kept 2, and one weight of that arc which is connecting oxygen place to transition T is weight 1. So this is representing the left hand side, and now when it will react, basically the state will change. So this initial state the state of any process can be represented by the distribution of the tokens in the places or among the places. For example, if you see, this is the starting state, the distribution of the tokens are 2, 2 and 0, because hydrogen place contains 2 tokens, oxygen place contains 2 tokens, and water place contains 0 tokens. So 2, 2, 0 is the distribution of the tokens. Now when the state will change, the eligibility criteria is the transition should be fireable, should be in enabled state. Enabled when, so when it will be fireable, when it will be in enabled state. Now what is the criteria of this transition to be in enabled state? The criteria is all the input places must contain sufficient number of tokens. I repeat, the criteria of this transition T to be enabled is that all the input places must contain at least sufficient number of tokens. So what are the input places of this transition T is hydrogen place and oxygen place. Now what is the sufficiency criteria of tokens? It totally governs by the weight associated by the input arcs. So if you see, the weight of the arc that is connecting hydrogen place to transition T is 2. So it means hydrogen place must contain at least 2 number of tokens. Whereas the oxygen, the arc which is connecting oxygen place to transition T, it is the weight is 1. So it means it must contain at least 1 number of tokens. So it is containing 2. So it means that this T is in enabled state. So when T is in enabled state, it fires. The transition fires, and transition, after firing of the transition, the movement of the tokens takes place. And how many movement? The movement of the tokens from input places to output places takes place, and how many tokens has to be moved from input place and deposited to the output place, that also will be governed by the weight of the arc associated. So here if you see in this particular example, because the weight of the arc from hydrogen to transition T is 2, so after firing T, 2 tokens will be moved out, and in the oxygen the weight is 1, so 1 token will be moved out. Now, so in total 3 tokens will be moved out if you sum up the number of tokens that will be moved out from hydrogen and oxygen place. But how many tokens will be deposited? As I said, that will be totally governed by the weight of the arc. So deposition will be totally governed by the weight of the output arc. Output arc weight is 2. So here only 2 tokens will be deposited. Now the noticeable point is, although the 3 tokens will be moved out, but only 2 tokens will be deposited. So there is no law of conservation of tokens. The movement of the tokens will be totally governed by the weight that are associated with the inputs and outputs are. Okay, so after firing, if you see, the next state will be this. So 2 tokens will be moved out from this place, 1 token will be moved out, and 2 tokens have been deposited. Now this T is not firing at all, is not fireable at all, because it does not meet the eligibility criteria, which is all the input places must contain sufficient number of tokens. Although oxygen place is containing sufficient number of tokens, which is 1, but hydrogen is not contained, which should at least contain 2. Right? So here the process will stop. So after converting it into water, the process will be stopped. So the distribution of the token has been changed from 2 to 0 to 0, 1, 2. Right? So basically the crux is the distribution of the tokens basically represent the state of that particular process. That I wanted to conclude, with this working mechanism of the Petri nets. Now let us see the reliability prediction, how we can do the reliability prediction now. So any modeling has 2 factors. First, it should have a modeling power, and which is basically, if you see the Petri net, it has a very good modeling power because it can represent the entire behavior of the system, and it has a very good decision power also because we can do a lot of mathematical analysis to quantify the various critical attributes to know insights about the system. So based on which we can take the decision as well. Okay, so anyway, just recall, because we are going to now discuss our reliability framework. So recalling about the Markov chain, it contains only 2 states, S1 and S2, and then one Markov property is the current state depends on the previous state only and not the past states. So here, if suppose x1, x2, x3, these are the random variables. So what is the probability that my system is in n plus 1 state is equal to x? Suppose the probability is x. So it will only depend on just previous states and not past previous states. This equation tells this only. Okay. Now we can easily convert. Okay. So one thing more, in the Petri net, we can transform the Petri net into the reachability graph. There is one concept of reachability graph. What is the reachability graph? Basically, it can tell up to like what are the possible states of that particular system where my system can reach throughout the operation time. And I said the state will be represented by the distribution of the token. So for example, if you go back to this, the reachability graph will be 2, 2, 0. This will be the initial state, and after firing T, it will come 0, 1, 2. Okay, so this is, and here the reachability graph ends. So 2 to 0 is just nothing. It is a distribution of tokens, and distributions are basically states. So just for an example, I have taken here. Suppose there are 7 places, and the distribution is like this: 1, 0, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0. After firing T1, the distribution changes like this. After firing of T2, the distribution is changing like this. And so it can be easily converted into the Markov chain because this is distribution of the token, which is nothing but is a state. And this is a transition, and every transition has some firing rate or the transition rate. So this is a transition rate. And we can solve this transition rate. We can use this transition rate to compute the transition probability that we will see later. Okay. So now coming towards the reliability prediction framework. So the first thing is we have to now our framework consists of 3 steps or three major phases. First thing is we have to create the Petri net model, and which we have already discussed. Now when we will be taking a particular case study to demonstrate the reliability of the control system, we will see. and then we have to convert this Patrinet model into the Markov chain. That we have also seen how we can convert it, and then we can compute the reliability. So that we will see how we can do that by solving the Markov chain reliability model. Now, for example, to start with, let us assume that pi it is the probability that a component is in state I at time t. Now I said the state, and the states can be failure states or behavioral states. So I could be, suppose there are m failure states or n behavioral states. Now as t goes to infinity, these probabilities converge to the stationary distribution. Now this is a very important concept which we can see like this. Suppose you take a glass and fill it with water, and just keep the glass on your table. What you will see, when you would have just put the glass, the water started moving zigzag way. Okay, and after some time it finally settles down. No zigzags, no vibrations will be there, no waves, no water waves will be there. But similarly, if you see there is a huge container, for example of room size, and you put a water, fill that container with water, and then lift this container and put it somewhere, you will see it will take a very long time to settle down the water as compared to the time taken to settle down the water in the case of glass. So what I wanted to say is, the more the system is complex, it will take more time to settle down or to converge to the stationary distribution. Okay, so here that is why theoretically we have assumed that as t goes to infinity, these probabilities of being of a component in particular states will converge to the stationary distribution. Okay, so which can be computed by, because the sum of all the probabilities of a system of being in a particular state is always be 1 by the total probability law. And so this is that equation. The second equation is very important. When we were considering this container which was filled with the water, you see that final for example, at the starting point the waves are very zigzags, so the state will be very, suppose that state is S1. Now slowly after time delta t, it is transiting to state S2, which will be where the intensity of the waves will decrease. So that state S2 will be equal to S1 into the transition probability from S1 to S2. Similarly, again S3 after delta t, then S3 will be S2 into the transition probability from S2 to S3. Now when it settles down finally, then the final state, suppose Sn, okay, where no zigzag is there, then next after delta t, suppose the state is going to remain same, Sn1. So Sn1 is equal to Sn into transition probability, where Sn1 is equal to Sn only. So this is the second equation. Okay, so here the pi is equal to pi, this final state is, or the stationary state will remain the same, and after transition probability, this is the stationary distribution basically. So what we can do is we can the crux here is after converting the Patrinet into the Markov chain, we can identify the probability of the system to be in the failure states, and we can sum up all those failure states and negate it by 1. to compute the reliability figure. Or either we can identify the probability of all the success states and you can sum up them. So either of the ways you can do, because the number of failure states are very less, so it is better to find out the probability of the failure states and then negate it by 1. So because reliability is anyway equal to 1 minus unreliability, okay, or the failure probability. Now let us take a case study of a control system of a particular communication module. For example, a very small case study I am taking, and there's a control system which is basically where the sensors are installed and it is reading the data from the sensor, and it is converting the analog signals into digital signals, and it is giving some output to drive some actuator to control some particular mechanism. If some parameter deviates from the, so here the communication is very important because the data is communicating and the other one is processing that particular data. So the communication module should be very highly reliable. Okay, so let us try to find the reliability of the communication module. And first let us try to understand the protocol or the algorithm. The algorithm is very simple. Like we make any calls to our friend. When we call to any particular friend, we say first hello. Then we wait actually for some time for the acknowledgement. And if we don't receive any acknowledgement, again we say hello. We try 2-3 times, hello, hello, hello. And after that, if I don't get any acknowledgement, I conclude there is some misconnection. There is some connection network problem, and then I cut the call and I try. Okay, so the same concept has been introduced, or the same concept has been designed in this communication module. So suppose there are the embedded units which is capturing the data from the sensor and it is sending the data to the display unit after processing that particular data. So whenever the embedded unit sends a new packets, because the data are being sent in the form of packets, the value of a count, suppose count is a variable just to trace how many packets have been sent, and the count of the variable has been set to 1. And then after sending this new packet, the embedded unit will wait for the acknowledgement for time t1 after sending packet. Now if embedded unit receives the acknowledgement before time t1, then packet sent will be successful. And to denote this success, we have kept one variable, and that variable is a binary variable. So I am just changing its to complement, 0 to 1 or 1 to 0. And if the count is less than n, an acknowledgement is not being received, then I have to say again hello. So embedded unit again retransmit the packet and sets the count 1 more. It will increase the count because I have to say hello 3-4 times depending on, like, so here I have set, for example. So afterwards, after the count reaches 3 and it doesn't get the acknowledgement, or count reaches n, suppose as a generic case, and it does not reaches the acknowledgement, get the acknowledgement, then embedded unit will terminate and it will report like that the packet has not been sent successfully. Okay, and then this binary variable will not change, and after t1 elapsed, after last data sent, this will be destroyed. Okay, now this is the algorithm, and I want to compute the reliability of that, but this particular algorithm. So the first thing, as I said, in our framework, we have to create a PatriNet model. So to create the Patrinet model, we'll have to identify the places and the transitions. So let us see with this figure. This is the figure, this is the Patrinet model of that particular algorithm. So let us try to understand this. Now this is a PSRDY. This is the place which represent that embedded unit is ready to send the data packet. Okay, and this binary variable is set to 0. Now here this transition TS0 is represent that the embedded unit had sent the data packet with sequence number 0, and it has set a retry count k is equal to 1 by firing this transition. After firing this transition, now if after sending, it will wait for the acknowledgement. So this place PSW0 is the place which is representing that embedded unit is waiting for the acknowledgement, and here the data packet will be sent. It was the trigger to send, and this PS0S, it represents the data packet has been sent. Now after the data packet has been sent, the display unit, suppose it is sending to the display unit, the display unit will be sending the acknowledgement. So here this transition represents that display unit sends the acknowledgement to embedded unit and with sequence number 0, and here the acknowledgement number, suppose it has received this PSUC, it is a successful acknowledgement. Okay, now from here we were seeing if it is waiting and suppose it detects the timeout and it has not gone PSW0, in that case what will happen? It will timed out and it will again retry. Okay, again it will send, and this loop will keep on till it reaches n. And because here the acknowledgement was token here, so then it will report to the success. The data send will be success. Otherwise, if it is not sending after event time, after end retry, it will represent that acknowledgement was not unsuccessful. It has not received any acknowledgement. So this place PDASU, it represents that data sent was unsuccessful and it was reported to operator. Now this is the Patrinet model, and starting I have put the token because my system is in ready state, so I have put one token, and the second one is I have put a token that embedded unit is getting a request from display unit to send the data. So these two should contain at one token, and if you see the left side, half of the left is exactly the mirror image of the right half of the right. The reason is first time I am sending the packet from the there are the two embedded units, EU1 and EU2, and I am sending the packet from alternate embedded units each time. Okay, so the right side will also work exactly same as the left side, and why we have kept the two embedded unit? For the redundancy purpose. Okay, so to increase the reliability. So you can easily work out, like in the first transition which is enabled is this, that is it sends the packet. So the input place of this transition is PSRDY0 and PDSR. So the token will be moved out from these two places, because you can see like the weight of the arc, every arc is 1, because I have not put any weight, so by default it is 1. Now after firing of transition T as 0, the tokens will be deposited into the output place, and output place are these two. So first one is data packet of sequence 0 is sent, and then EU is waiting for acknowledgement number of sequence 0. In this way, like you will be able to draw the reachability graph. So I will show the reachability graph, but here we have to associate the delay in each of the transition, because it is a real-time system and we have to do the worst case scenario. So we have to associate some time delay to each of the transition, and that time delay, the basis of how much time delay has to be kept, that has to be decided based on the specifications or based on the expert elicitation from the past similar kind of projects. So accordingly, the weight in the milliseconds have been assigned in those particular transition. Now we can run that particular model in a tool known as TimeNet, or there are the various tools available for the PatriNets where you can run and they can give the throughput of these transitions. Throughput are nothing but it is a number of firings of that particular transition per unit time. So these are the values that we have got. Okay. Now you can convert that PatriNet model into the reachability graph, which was our like in the framework. So you can see the distribution in the reachability graph. What we used to do, we have to identify all the states. And what are the states? The distribution of the tokens basically represents the states. So if you see, the distribution of the tokens are only two places are containing tokens, and rest of the are not containing tokens. So what here, the M0, which is the initial state, only two places containing token, that is a 1 and this is 1. Okay. Now the second one is, after firing, the tokens will be moved out from these two places and will be deposited in these two places, 1 1. So the next state will be these tokens will be has been removed, so 1 has been converted into the 0, and where it has been deposited it will be shown as 1. Now the markings, so these are known as markings or states, which are representing the distribution of the tokens, or marking also we know. So this is the initial marking M0, M1 is the next marking, like this. And the marking can be tangible or vanishable. Tangible marking, because we have kept some associated some delay in the transition, so definitely it will take little time to fire. So where it takes little time, it is known as tangible marking. Where it does not take any time, it is known as vanishing marking. Okay. So in this way we have identified all the possible markings or states, and for this convenience, just we have mapped these transition rates by lambda 1 or 2 up to lambda 12. Throughput or rate, any. Okay. Now, so this is the reachability graph conversion, and we can see, like in this reachability graph conversion, there are the two unsuccessful states which were reaching. One is M8 and one is the M3. Where what happened, like if you will draw that into that, you will see, like after firing of this transition T, which is the acknowledgement sent unsuccessful, which represent. So basically these M3 and M8 will be the unsuccessful states. So what we can do, either we can compute the probability of these unsuccessful states and sum up those probabilities, and we can negate it by 1. Okay, so it is better, or either we'll have to compute the probability of the success of all the states and then sum up to come out the reliability. Now this can be easily converted into the Markov chain, as we have already seen the example. Now we have just created a transition rate matrix. So in the in the rows and columns, we have just stated the markings of the states. There are the 10 states from M0 to M9. And what is the M0 to M1? Suppose if you go back, this is the Markov chain. There from M0 to M1 it is lambda 1 transition rate. So self will be definitely minus lambda 1 because the sum will be 0 that we have already seen. So M0 to M1 is lambda 1 and self will be minus 1, and all are not and M0 is not transiting anywhere else, so all are 0. Similarly, if you go back, M1 is transiting to two states, to M2 and M4. So to M2 is M3 and lambda 3 and lambda 11. So if you see in the lambda 3 and lambda 11, and definitely the self transition will be minus. So because the summation of the row must be 0. In this way we can create this transition rate matrix and we can solve this. Next, how the transition rate matrix can be converted into the transition probability, because the Markov chain contains the number of states and the transition probability. So the transition probability conversion is very easy. Suppose I want to calculate the probability from transiting state I to j. It is the transition rate probability from I to j upon summing up all the transition probabilities except self transition, and where this I should not be equal to j. When I is equal to j, so all will be 0. So if you see, all the diagonal values of this matrix are 0, and rest of the elements can be solved using this formula. So this is the transition probability estimation. Now stationary distribution formula that we have already seen. Just to recall, let me go back to the same slide. Yes, so these are the two equations where sum of all the states, yani ki M0 plus M2 plus M1 plus M2 plus up to M9 will be equal to 1, and this is all the states, final states equal to that state into transition probability. The same equation I have made here only. Yes. So these are the states, and this is the same. The final state will be just the previous states into the transition probability, and you can solve these two equations with summing up these all the states equal to 1. You can come out with the values of each of M0, M1, M2, M3 up to M9. Okay, so these are the state transition state probability, the system of being in a particular. So you can solve this, and then the reliability of the communication, as I said, if you go back into the same figure, there are the M3 and M8 are the two states which are unsuccessful states. So just add these values M3 and M8 and you can negate it by 1. Here 1 minus probability of M3 and probability of M8, which we have already calculated. So we can calculate the reliability of this communication module, that is 0.99603, which is a very good reliability figure that we are getting. So the ultimate in conclusion, like we have seen what all the things how the PatriNet model is beneficial, and how it can be helpful to identify or to quantify the reliability, and we have seen the small case study. So our framework, as to recall, basically consists of we can create the PatriNet model, and then we can convert it into the reachability graph, to convert it into the Markov chain, and we can solve that Markov chain using these state equations, stationary state equations, to come out with the reliability. So if we are able to find out the probability of the failure states, because as I said, the system contains the success states and the failure states, and if I am able to find out the probability of all the success states, summing up will give the reliability. Or the vice versa, if I can find out the probability of the failure states, I can negate it one by one to compute the reliability figure of that particular module. So here we have seen the particular module, and if the system is large, what you can do, you can identify the critical subsystems, and you can break it down into more smaller segments, and probably you can find out the reliability of the interfaces as well as those components, and you can compute then the overall system reliability with the help of the reliability block diagram or reliability graphs, like the way we have like shown while discussing the traditional methods. So all I wanted to convey. If any questions are there